Welcome aboard for another video.
Thanks, Conductor Keith. So my Loco remote arrived today. Came with this component, this to plug into here. I guess that's for the batteries. All these various things for speaker and lights to plug straight into here. And it came with a detailed set of instructions. Now, the interesting thing is, I'm not very good with electronics, so we'll see how bad or scary this is. So as per instructions, I wired in a 2-amp fuse. It's kind of big, chunky thing. That's what I had. Through a switch that's under there. And, of course, then the black part to the black part, right? So the batteries are hooked up. This was all very basic soldering. This switch is one I already had. So you do need to get your own on-off switch, and you do need to have your own fuse. You can get fuses much smaller than this. But, you know, I have room inside the Locomotive. So these are the two that I will use to plug in here for connecting the motors. I'll have to cut this, of course, because I'll have to solder these onto the motors. Well, none of that was rocket science. It was all really simple. Now, in terms of the motor, I don't know if I have the polarity right, but that's a simple matter of switching these two one way or the other. So we'll see. At least I hope so. The next step is connecting the LED lights. I don't have 3-volt lights, so I have to source them. So I'm not going to do that right now. Then there's also a business of adding a small 8-ohm speaker, which I also don't have right now. For now, we'll see if the Locomotive runs. Next is the Wi-Fi setup. So this becomes Wi-Fi, connects directly to the phone. It does work. Setting up the phone was easy, and what I like about the screen is you can see the power that's left in your battery in real time. You can also see your speed in terms of percentage from 0 to 100, I guess, percentage of your battery power. It was an easy, cheesy setup, and I was right. At first, the Locomotive went in reverse when it said forward, but it was just a simple matter of switching those two plugs around. For the purposes of my test of this system, we'll assume this is my normal stop of New Rutabaga. Down here, where the boot is my normal stop of Pencross. And over here will be my normal stop of Rousel Station. Now, all those buildings that I put out for those places are in a shipping box now because we're moving. I still have this together. It won't be together much longer, but everything else is packed up. Of course, we haven't packed her up yet. For this review, I'm going to use Henry and Marge's chartered train. All these railcars are Swift 16. If you have not seen my previous video where I show myself kit bashing this is what the coach used to look like. So far, my one and only criticism of the Loco remote is that I have to operate it off my iPhone, and that's fine. But my iPhone is what I use to make my YouTube videos. So I like to use my iPhone to take videos, but now I have to use my iPhone to operate the train. This is, of course, no real actual criticism. I mean, most people are just running trains. Me, I like to make videos, but anyway, it's a small price to pay. This is my old iPhone. The reason why I don't use it anymore is because the battery only lasts about 10 minutes. So I'm going to load up this Locomotive on here for the purposes of testing it today and carry on. So it's a simple matter of turning the on switch on. I have a hidden on switch there. This will look for and find, there it is, there's the address for the Wi-Fi. Tick on that, and you type in the password Loco remote. I'll put my phone down to do that. So now I've asked it to join Loco remote. So in other words, the device in here, the little electronic board that you saw earlier, becomes itself the Wi-Fi. It says weak security, but that's fine. You can ignore that because when you're on here, as the instructions that come with this say, you're not actually on the internet at all. Now, despite the fact that this phone is not connected to the internet, you type in the address locoremote.co.uk/V1. And this page pops up. That's the controls for your Locomotive. Now, the interesting thing is, this is being read. This web page is being read directly from the device in there. So if the website, the actual website of Loco remote and all that goes down, goes away, and all that goes away, it doesn't matter. All you need is to take your iPhone and bind it to that, in a sense. It's like the traditional remote control where you bind it to something. Your transmitter gets bound. Well, this is what's happening in a sense to your phone. This is brilliant. It removes the necessity to have a separate transmitter. It's much easier to install than your traditional RC You can use any smartphone. I can get my wife's Samsung and still load up the page and operate it from that. Now, I'm used to having knobs and dials on my remote controls, and it'll take some getting used to pressing these buttons on a phone. There's something I like about the knobs. But if you can get past that, I think this is an awesome system. So I don't know how well you can see that because it's so bright out here. But if I were to, so it's already in forward, see it's green, forward. It's so smooth. If I press first gear, boom, I press first gear. It starts moving. I could press second gear. And second gear will put it up to 100% of whatever the battery is. I can go back to first gear, and that's operates it at 60%. You can do 5% increases in faster, 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 or you can go slower, slower. And coast to a stop is brilliant. You press coast to the stop, and this is what happens. And you can see it counting down there on the bottom. Later, when I take delivery of the little 8 ohm tiny little speaker that I've ordered to put in there, I'll be able to press the sounds, because this particular Loco remote I've got has some sounds. There's horn sounds and whatnot. So no engine sound, but horn sounds. And the lights as well. I can turn on and off the lights, and the lights will be automatically reversible. So when I go in reverse, the rear headlight I'll install will go on, and when I go in forward, that will go off and the forward one will come on. That will happen automatically. But I didn't have any 3-volt LEDs, so I had to order them as well. I'll just put it in reverse, easy, and I can just go, well, I'll just do first gear for speed here now. It'll start to go back. When I think it's ready, I'll just put it in coast to a stop, and there it is. It coasts right to a stop, right where I want it. Now we can go forward again. So Henry and Marge have picked up their turnips from Dave, who lives in New Rutabaga. So it's time to go forward. We're in forward. Let's just do first gear. It's really simple. And away we go. So smooth. Now, if you haven't seen my video on how I did this, the mechanism in there is an 040 mechanism, a diesel mechanism that comes from an O-gauge 3-rail toy train. It's got 2 nice can motors that draw very little power. I should mention that I am only running 12 volts of battery in here. The mechanism was designed for 18 volts, but I'm only running 12. I actually find that using this controls this locomotive with a finer control than I used to be able to get with my modern Lionel transformer and whatnot on my 3-rail O-gauge track. I've never seen the mechanism in here run so smoothly. It's a very direct, very smooth DC application of power right to the motors. The smooth starts and stops are such that your scale passengers aren't going to get whiplash or throw up their lunch. That's particularly important to Henry and Marge because they're very sensitive. Another feature that's good is the stop, as opposed to coast to stop. Now it's set up so that it doesn't wreck your motor. It will stop not instantly, but fairly quick. So let's check that out. First gear. Well, why not go to second gear? Let's go all the way to second. 100%. So we're now up to 100%. If I want to stop in a crash stop, like, oh my gosh, I'm about to go off the edge because I forgot to put the bridge in, you press the stop button, boom. It's designed to coast so that you're not going to wreck your gearing or anything by a sudden hard stop. Lovely. I just love how that goes up. You can see the thing going up like that. So nice. You know, I could play endlessly with this. Isn't that wonderful? Close to a stop, and it just stops right there. Nice. It's a hot day. The dog's got the idea. It's such an easy system to use if you have station stops. So there the train is stopped at New Rutabaga, but we want to carry on to Pencross. Now Pencross is not a great distance, so I'm only going to put it up to 60%. Now we're going to stop at New Pencross, so I'll coast to a halt. And you know, the passengers do their business. Now we're going to carry on to Rousel. There's a 2% grade at the end of this deck, so I might want a little more power, so I'll press faster to go from 60% power to 75. And here we are at Rousel, so I'm going to coast to a stop. Perfect. Of course, you wait the applicable amount of time, but there's a good distance now between here and the loop back to New Rutabaga, so I'm going to go second gear. So we're going to start out just by pressing second gear and go all the way to 100%. And of course we're now approaching New Rutabaga, so I press coast to a stop. And look at how smooth that is. Oh, it's wonderful. All in all, I'm going to say this is a brilliant system. Absolutely brilliant. When I first saw it, I thought that this was a web page that was somehow tied to the internet, and what happens if that web page goes down, but it's not. Everything's self-contained. Once you have the unit in the locomotive, which is easy to put together, the instructions are easy. A couple of questions I had for Chris, who owns this company, he was super fast in responding. When you consider how simple this is compared to a whole RC system, I just love it. I can't say enough about it. I think that you should check it out.
Well, you know, Marge, I really like this system, and Terry does too.
Oh, I know what you mean, Henry. Yes, indeed, it's a great system, and it runs our train just perfectly well.
I hope you liked this video, and I hope you find it useful. I have no affiliation whatsoever or vested interest in Loco Remote. I was skeptical at first because I'm not a technophile. However, this turns out to be something that far exceeded my expectations, honestly. It runs so smoothly and so well. It's intuitive, it's easy, there's lots of options. You can get the basic, cheaper system that doesn't have lights, doesn't have sound, but it will still operate your engine just like this. This system was really not very much money. It's certainly less than I would have spent on an RC system. I'll leave a link to Loco Remote's website in the description to this video. Please consider liking this video, subscribing, but more importantly, share it so we can help encourage our hobby.